afternoon, sir. Today I'd like to present to you a process improvement project. But before we get started on the project, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the organization. So, the organization is a military organization, it's a military intelligence group, and it's comprised of DoD civilians, contractors, and military members from all branches of the military. So, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, a little bit of everything. Also, the operational environment for the organization. So the organization works a lot overseas. It could be humanitarian missions or combative missions, but most of the training is done within the states. So they also support things like defense intelligence agencies. They support DEA missions and things like that. So there's other agencies that they work with outside of just the DoD. So now that you kind of have a scope of what the organization does and who they work for and where they work at, I'll go right into the problem statement, which leads me to the why and how we're going to get it done. So the problem statement really is the why. So the organization has experienced a lack of supply chain resources. With all the operational things going on in the organization, it's put a lot of stress on the logistics and supply chain management side of the organization. So one of the resources that they're lacking is basic education for commanders, and along with the education, another resource is the authority to delegate and manage equipment. That's been a long issue for the organization, and it's kind of steamrolled into a huge problem. And combined with that problem is that the organization lacks GCSS software. So basically, GCSS is Global Combat Support Systems, and this system is pretty much designed to manage equipment, manage resources, just like any other logistics agency in the private sector. So anything from deliveries and also inventory, data pulling, report pulling, business intelligence with live data. This organization lacks it. So the combination of lack of supply chain resources and the lack of GCSS, this Global Combat Support System, has really hindered the performance of their organization, and it's caused a large amount of financial losses within the past few years, specifically within the last 24 months. So why did we arrive at this problem, or why did we arrive at this project? And why? It's basically because of the problem statement, because lack of supply chain management and a lack of resources, a lack of supply chain management resources, and a lack of GCSS has hindered the performance and caused all these financial losses. So how are we going to improve it? Um, well, the core solution behind it is to implement the right software, because within the software there's resources to enable commanders and stakeholders to improve their processes. So this is the best course of action. Using GCSS is almost a one-stop shop solution. So that is another reason why we're gonna implement that project for our organization. So now that we covered the problem statement, the why, the how, some of the role players and stakeholders, let's talk about the stakeholder analysis. So I went over who's involved in the organization earlier. This is just a reiteration of that and where they fall in the analysis. Of course, junior and senior commanders play a big role. We have to keep them highly satisfied and make sure that the system's up and running so that they can do their jobs effectively. Project managers, very important for implementing something new into the organization. Northrop Grumman works side by side with the project team. They are the government contractor who implements the system and designs the system for DoD, and they do a really good job of coming out and providing education, right? They provide the education resource we were lacking prior, and they also provide guidance and walkthroughs on different menus and how to pull reports and what data is important and what data isn't important. So IT staff and logistics staff, very essential to getting the project done and executed well. They play a vital role in the project moving forward. Now that we talked about the analysts of the stakeholders, I'll bring you to another part, which is basically some side details that tell you a little bit about each of the stakeholders. The first analyst slide doesn't really explain what they do, so this slide will explain what each stakeholder does, and it'll kind of bring a little bit more sense in motion when we see the proposed solution and how it works out, and what role they play in the organization. Proposed solutions. So the best format and the best platform for us to implement the solution in the project would be using the 5S method. So that involves sorting, for employees, sorting through equipment, making sure work orders are closed, making sure that these items are consolidated and fixed before logistics staff has to inventory by serial numbers and get ready for the equipment to be transferred digitally. That part happens, the digital transfer part, and it begins in the set portion. So the set, logistics, and IT staff get together, get the data, get serial numbers going, and IT begins to find out how to format and plug serial numbers or equipment by serial number into the new system, where it starts in the cloud, right? It starts in the cloud, and that's where standardization comes in. So the IT staff works with project management and Northrop Grumman to ensure that that the equipment is standardized and pooled correctly. So across all platforms of the organization, there must be a standard to put the information in and then pull it out of the cloud. This creates a very efficient and effective way to transition from one system to another system. So taking old data or lack of data, creating it properly, pulling it into the cloud, and then pulling it into the old system. Sustaining, the final part of the 5Cs method, is basically keeping commanders briefed and up to date on the status and progress of the project. And that's very essential because we want commanders to know, whether they're senior level commanders or junior level commanders, that the project is working and that we're moving forward. And if we come across any hiccups, these are the hiccups that we've had, and this is the reason why. And it's very important to keep those commanders up to date and briefed on the latest information. So proposed solution layout reflects a lot of what you'll see in the timeline in the next few slides. So the layout gives us a sequence of things that have to be accomplished in order for us to get to our end goal, which is the project, completion of the project. So everything from pulling employees from the warehouse and pulling equipment, standardizing it, setting serial numbers, conducting the right inventory, pulling it into the cloud. This solution, it makes it very easy to follow and flow because we know exactly what has to be done and it matches the timeline. So speaking of the timeline, this project gives us an array of information as far as what has to be done. So beginning, the date was May 1st. This is what the project entails. These are the key players in the project, and it also lists the days that each key point in the project is authorized. So 30 days is authorized for a certain part, and the last part of the project is authorized 60 days for a combined of 180 days, which means the project should be done and complete before October 28th. So why this is done is to give ample time to each department and each task. And this is what's going to make us the most effective, is by giving everybody ample time. If we give one department less time than the other or more time, it's going to somewhat offset our effectiveness within the organization to implement this project. A very key part of our project is our communication plan. So how will we get communication out to the stakeholders? So there's a variety of ways. One, there's an informal way and a formal way. So formally, we'll make sure that things are clear. As you can see in the first bullet, it's very clear and formal about what has to happen, what needs to be done, and why it needs to be done. Secondly, concise. We'll give stakeholders only the information they need. Too much information is not effective. Not every stakeholder needs to know everything. So the mindset is that the stakeholder in charge of a certain task only needs to know what he needs to have done in that task, and he only needs to know what has to be accomplished in order for him to be effective. Also, concise. Like I said, too much information is not good. So stakeholders will only have what they're exactly told to do, and what is incorporated in their part of the project. Correct information, always important. It must be accurate. Stakeholders will be delivered accurate information that only pertains to their department. Courteous, this is part of the informal process. So we want to hold meetings that are courteous, that share information to everybody involved in the process so that everybody can have a free flow of information and ideas and what needs to be done. And maybe they can have a meeting of the minds and share their experiences about what has happened effectively and what hasn't. So having both settings is important. You want informal channels and formal channels, and definitely informal channels allow for a little bit more leg room to discuss and negotiate things that need to happen. Um, in closing, along with the communication plan, I also feel that when the project is complete, that we conduct an AAR. So an AAR, after action review, is an essential part of completing a project and possibly not running into the same hurdles when it comes to the next project. So an AAR takes a few positive comments out of the project of what happened and takes a few negative comments, and we list those things and we write them down. And we think about things like what should have happened, what could have happened, what went wrong, what went right, what could we do in the future. So those are kind of some ideas that are thrown around in the AAR. So when the project is complete, we would like to conduct an AAR with all the stakeholders so we can know in the future what needs to be done to be more effective. Other than that, sir, this is all I have for the project. I thank you for your time. Thank you so much for everything you've taught us along the way. We really appreciate it. It's been an extremely effective class. It's been an extremely effective environment. We enjoyed all the curriculum. We enjoyed the way you distributed it to us, and we look forward to working with you in the future. And I speak for the rest of the class when I say that we had a wonderful time, and it's been a great learning experience for all of us. And I think we'll all apply things that you've showed us sometime in our life. So thank you again. We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future.